Hi, I'm Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
And we're the Film Flamers.
And it's time for some hot takes. We have not given our recommendations on movies that we have been watching since July.
Yeah, we got a lot.
Yeah. And just as a reminder for those who missed our last Hot Takes episode, or maybe this is the first time you're listening to it, Chris and I watch a lot of movies and we rate things on Letterboxd, and this is our chance to get together and sort of like give short reviews of the things that we've watched and give our recommendations, either go watch or stay far away from.
That's right, and we've got movies and TV and documentaries and everything else ready to go just to share with you, our listeners.
That's right. So why don't we get it started? So who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Well, I actually kind of have a couple of these because I kind of segued from like documentaries into actual movies. And so the first one that I watched was Haunters, The Art of the Scare, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, and so I don't know if have you seen that?
I have not. I've skimmed across it many times and just never sat down and watched it.
Yeah, so it's a documentary about these like mom and pop kind of like haunted houses that people like make themselves. Some of them only open up for 4 hours a year. Some of them are open, all the time, every day. But it also really kind of deep dives into the more like horrific X-rated ones where they have like naked people or actually torture people.
Wow.
And to the point where people are so kind of disgusted by at least one of these people that he's gotten like death threats and he's had to move. People have threatened to burn it down. And you watch videos of it and it's just like, this should not be legal. Like, I was like, I would totally do that. It was always in the, pop culture stories, right? Of showing up at this place and signing a waiver and it being like a real, actual cool haunted house. No, this is not what you want to do. Where at the beginning of it, I was just like, oh my God, I could totally do that. I would sign the waiver. I would do this in a heartbeat. Like, you have to wear a mask and they pull you in the back of a truck and then they put you into the haunted house and they discuss what scares you beforehand. So they kind of customize the show a little bit, but they literally will do horrible things. Like if you're afraid of spiders, they will shove spiders in your mouth.
Like live spiders?
Yes. If you throw up, they will pick that throw up off the ground and put it in your mouth.
Oh.
They will drown you. They will lock you into coffins. They will electrocute you. They will do all sorts of things. And because you sign that waiver, there's not much you can do about it. And if you say no, at least one of these places does not have a safe word and they will not let you go until they are happy with the footage they've gotten of you.
Oh, no.
And so I'm just like, no. But anyway, it's a really fascinating documentary. I believe it's on Shudder.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Haunters, Art of the Scare. And that's, anyway, I gave it 3.5 stars just because like, so like in awe of it, but also kind of disgusted and terrified by it. So that's where it kind of landed for me, but it's definitely a recommendation for any of you.
Well, you know how scared I get at haunted houses or haunted attractions, right? Like I mean, listeners, like, I get scared at the drop of a hat, but like when I'm in a physical environment, especially where things can touch me or I can smell things or like feel things, I am a fucking baby. Like, I am just terrified. I have to hold on to somebody and shit. Yeah. So,
well, I don't want to be like in an alone kind of, we're trying to terrify you and traumatize you experience. I would rather like, an unsupervised group visit to a multi-level hotel or something that has maybe real creatures in it and real danger. You could slip and fall, there's rusty nails and shit. Fine, I'll sign a waiver. But if I wanted to go out the red exit door at any time, I could. Or if there was a safe word, I wouldn't mind them signing a waiver for people to hit me, touch me, push me, right? That's part of it. And I feel like that would be a really cool experience. But there's a line there where you don't really want to come out of it with PTSD or trauma. Like one of the people coming out of it was like completely beside themselves, terrified, passed out, all this stuff. They had shit and pissed themselves. And, on the other side of it, when they were getting unblindfolded, ungagged and everything else, they were like, at least one person was like, oh my God, I'm so excited because I kind of want to do it too. I want to volunteer here so I can hurt people too.
Oh my God.
And they kind of laughed and he was like, I mean, scare people. And I was like, holy shit, and he got these like ex-convicts to do all of it, and that's, yeah, it's really weird and creepy. Not the right people. Like they've had to fire someone because he was actually giving people drugs in there and like touching them inappropriately. And yeah.
Well, I don't want to like alarm you, but one of the haunted houses that we've gone to several times in Fort Worth is a charity, right? And so a lot of the people who are there running it is, you know, people who are doing their community service, right? So, I mean, like...
That's different. Like, this guy has to hire people that are okay with waterboarding people, essentially, or have experience in doing that and things like that. And several times during the whole thing, it was kind of a very pro-Trump, anti-liberal type of situation where, like, they were talking about Abu Ghraib and they were all like, well, those guys were innocent in my eyes and things like that. Yeah, like, this is the sort of thing where sadistic people are getting their rocks off. You know what I mean?
I'm sort of intrigued by this.
You don't want to place yourself in those hands. So, but anyway, we've talked a lot about this one watch. So you need to watch it. But that segued into me wanting to watch House LLC.
Yay!
Also based off of a recommendation you made like a Halloween or two ago on one of your top 10s. And I also gave that 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And it makes me kind of want to watch the sequels, even though I've heard they're, you know, some of them are as interesting, but not as good. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
I haven't seen the sequels, so I don't know, but I really enjoyed that first movie. It scared the shit out of me, actually. I mean, it's like found footage-y, right? And I mean, it was. I mean, I really liked it. Yeah, it's a found footage horror movie, and it like scared the shit out of me. So I really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, it was way better than I thought it was going to be because I kind of came in with really low because I'm not, you know, a huge found footage, you know, horror film fan.
If they're done well, you know, I mean, like, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you know, like one thing I was really against them, like after Blair Witch, because it was kind of basically the first one, and there was such a huge thing about it, and people were just like hoodwinked by the whole, oh, this is actually real. I'm like, no, it's not, you idiots. You know, some of my friends were like that. And anyway, so after that, there was a couple of like clones that came out. Some of them were okay, and most of them were shitty, you know, but then Paranormal Activity came out, which is ritualistically shit on by the horror community, you know, at all. But I really enjoyed some of the Paranormal Activity movies. I thought some of them were really good and really effective, you know, so honestly, it just goes to show you yet again that we can't just, you know, judge books by their cover or like say no to all genres or subgenres, right? We have to like judge every single creation by its own merits, you know. So anyway, I do recommend House LLC. It's a great fun watch, especially if you're interested in like a nice Halloween movie.
Yeah, it's scary. So I mean, I would like to know what other people think about it. Based upon that, then I have watched a couple of movies that you recommended to me. Oh, so I'll start off with, finally I watched The Hitcher, the remake from 2007.
Okay.
And I know that we talked about this in our recent interview with Nikki on our Shooting the Flames episode, and I said I was going to go watch it like that night. Right? Okay. I didn't. It took me a couple days or a week to watch it. Really? I mean, like after we record, you know, I sometimes go and watch a movie or sometimes not, but I did finally sit down and watch The Hitcher, and you have been telling me to watch this movie for quite some time. Yeah. And it really took another person like calling me out on it too, to go watch it. And, I liked it. I did. I rated it 3 stars. I would even say 3.5 maybe, but 3 is what I stuck at. But I kept comparing it to the original, which I like a lot, you know, and so I think that the original is a little bit better, but I did like how they ramped up sort of the action in this movie a lot.
And you know, I don't really remember, I didn't really remember my overall feeling of the film versus like specific scenes that were super effective. There's a cop chase scene in there that's super effective that kind of dials it to 11 a little bit, and it kind of comes, you know, unexpectedly. And so I really liked that scene. I remember that. And I was like, there's some really cool scenes in here. It's actually really well acted and competently made. And so I knew that you'd enjoy it. So I'm sad to see that it's only a 3-star, but I kind of understand because I know that the whole movie in and of itself has to be judged.
I do like, I mean, I liked the action a lot, and I know that they changed that killer quite a bit to sort of fit this movie and sort of fit the time in which it was made. Yeah. And I mean, it was good for those merits. I will say this, though. If I see a man shooting a gun at a helicopter, I damn well better see that helicopter crash to the ground. So he like shot that helicopter, and I was like, well, where did it go? I don't remember a huge explosion. I was just like,
Well,
Come
let's
on,
not spoil
Michael Bay the
this.
fuck out of it or something.
Yeah, definitely it could have been Michael Bay a little bit, but it was good enough, I think, for what it was. It's also always fun to see new and interesting ways for Sean Bean to die.
Well, with that being said, I also watched Silent Hill, in which he did not.
Oh.
So,
But I'm
he
glad you finally
survived.
watched Silent Hill, and I think you just finished that up today.
yeah. So, yeah, I started it yesterday, and I was having a buffering problem with my TV, and so I finished it today when I got home from work. And I will say that the second half of this movie is a lot better than the first.
Yeah, it does a lot of exposition and kind of introduction to the town of Silent Hill. One thing that I love about that movie is the creature effects, which I always thought were CG, and they're not, a lot of them. Especially like the little gray burnt children thing with the no arms or whatever.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like that's literally like elasticy see-through stuff that they painted, and it made it, and it's so warpy when it moves that it looks like it had to be CG, but it's all in camera. And I was just like, holy crap, when I watched the making of it. And also the atmosphere of the film is really, really, really good. And I love that it's like on this repetitive, you hear those sirens, those like atomic sirens or whatever, and then everything just kind of gets dark and changes. And I just love the whole idea of that. And I thought it was, at least visually, really well pulled off.
Visually, yes. I mean, like looking at this movie is incredible. The creature effects are great. Like, and the fact that you're talking about those little small children from the beginning, I thought that was by far, if they did CG, that would have been the CG part of it. The rest of it, I thought, was like costume effects, but that's incredible. So yeah, I really enjoyed the movie just looking at it. I enjoyed all the creatures and the different like horror aspects of it. And I really enjoyed Alice Creek a lot in this movie, like giving her best Margaret White performance, Yeah. It was good for those things. And I will say that is what saved it for me, because the story to me is kind of like loosey-goosey. But, it really saves itself toward the back half of the movie when they're showing that like flashback of why things are going on and what happened before. And it's sort of like shown in this like grindhouse kind of like, distorted film kind of way. I was like, this is perfect and great. This is why people like horror movies. And then we got to those fucking nurses, and I was like, this is why I like horror movies as a gay man.
So stylized. Every single one of those creatures are fairly iconic in a way.
And I cannot forget the fucking like pyramid head daddy guy walking around with no shirt on. I was just like,
and
I
no
like
pants.
this movie.
His ass is hanging out the whole time.
I mean, I'm okay with that for sure. So I gave that 3.5 stars. So a little bit more than the Hitcher, but only because really I think like it was just so neat to look at. And I can see how horror fans would like this movie a lot. I read a lot of people like poo-pooing this film and saying that it's terrible, and you just have to look past sometimes like things that are bad and just look at the things that are good for a minute.
Yeah.
And it can totally make a movie just that much more enjoyable.
I thought it was a good popcorn horror flick, especially for those of us that like design and aesthetic,
I completely agree. And so I really enjoyed watching it quite a bit.
And of course you recognize the actress from White Noise.
Yes, Deborah Kara Unger. Yeah. I also saw today, it's a little off topic, but Crash, that movie I was talking about from White Noise, is going to be, they're having a Criterion edition made.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah. Maybe we should cover that movie sometime.
So, continuing my jaunt down documentaries that lead me to horror movies, I saw Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. And so this is all about, the teenage actor that starred in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, and about that story and how all the gay subtext was there and wasn't really ready to be accepted by audiences, because it to me it really stopped being subtext so much it was like text in some cases.
Yeah.
And it's super obvious, and a lot of people feigned ignorance in the making of it, and all the blame for how badly it was received went on this actor and how it affected his life, and also kind of the story of how he kind of came into his career in the 80s during the kind of right before the height of the AIDS crisis, and what kind of happened after. And it's kind of a tragedy. And but now he's going around and he's speaking, and he's going to these, horror events and everything else. I gave it a 3.5 stars because I thought it was a really cool story and it was interesting. I think you rated it slightly less when you saw it.
Yeah, I gave it 3 stars when I watched it. And I'm not quite sure why, really. I mean, I enjoyed the movie and I enjoy his story, and it
didn't quite bring it home as far as like the meaning of what the movie is about. Like the documentary, right? Is it about him and his life, or is it about the movie and like the making of it? It didn't quite gel somewhere. There was some sort of disconnect, but that's the story itself. And I think overall it would either work better if it was like a movie told in interviews, but then showing like reenactments versus, a documentary about that side of the making of the movie itself versus this person's life, so there was a little bit of a disconnect there. But anyway.
I did like the parts where he got to sit down with like his castmates and director, right, and talk about the things that were happening on set and whether or not they felt the same way, right? And it's all building up to his like confrontation with the writer of the movie, right, who's also gay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I felt like there should have been a little bit more of a comeuppance or something, like I wanted a bigger climax maybe. And I feel really bad for this guy because I like A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I like him, and I feel for him as a gay man. I think that a lot of gay actors are sort of either typecast or just not given work, especially back in the 80s and early 90s. And so, I mean, like his plight is something that we should all pay attention to and try to avoid, when it comes to casting and things like that now. But,
and as far as that final kind of confrontation between him and the author, it's like, I'm sure the filmmakers would have loved some sort of like scream fest that ends in tears or something, but these people are more mature than that. And they had an adult conversation,
right.
And the guy forgave him almost immediately, like before I probably would have even, he was just like, well, he gave this half-assed, like, I'm sorry you feel that way kind of apology. And he's like, well, I accept that apology. I was like, what? So I don't know, that's part of it. That's just life though. That's the issue with documentaries, so you don't always get the Hollywood moment that you want because it's real life, but,
yeah, you can't write it,
that's fine.
So what movie did that lead you to watch?
Of course, that led me to watch Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which I gave 3 stars. Which is just like, I didn't want to like hate it, I don't love it, don't hate it. It's somewhere in that meh area, kind of on the good side of meh, just because it's so, I don't know, kind of quaint for its time.
Yeah, I mean, for what people call like one of the gayest horror movies ever made, it is kind of quaint, right? Can you remember the last time you watched this though? I mean, like before?
God, it must have been 15 years at least, if not 20 years.
Yeah.
But I still, of course, the original I haven't rated that ever, but I need to go back and watch the original again because it's been quite a few years as well. Probably when I watched them all in a string together, watched the whole series, and so obviously at least a couple hours longer than I watched this one the last time. So, but I remember that one being much better. So I think, and as a classic, the first one is probably going to end up being like a 4 or 4.5 on my rating, but I need to go and rewatch it.
So where do you stand on the whole, like, it's a really gay movie aspect? Did you see like the gay subplots and things like that in it?
It's like, yes, it's like I said, the subtext becomes text, it's just right there, but it's just kind of blue balls because, you want it, if it was made in modern times, it would have been like Love, Simon, but a horror movie, it would have, and that's kind of what we need at this point.
Yes, so. I think so. I don't know. I mean, I like that movie. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's been a while since I've seen the entire series. So I think that's probably due for a rewatch for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like, this is sort of also recommended to me, but after we did our Aliens episode back in July, especially your top 10 that you gave us of like aliens and horror film, I wanted to go back and do some watching. And one of the movies that I watched is something that you recommended to me for quite some time, and it was Attack the Block.
Okay.
And I thought it was a fantastic movie. Just like, I just loved it so much. Like for aliens and horror and everything, I thought it was just great. And I don't know. It's kind of hard to like put into words, and it's been a while since I've watched it now because that was a couple months ago at this point.
Yeah.
But John Boyega, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was so good in this movie.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed just like the small like London aspects of it, this tiny community sort of fighting up against the things that are coming to get them. And not to mention these aliens are fucking incredible looking.
Yeah,
right?
They look awesome.
Like glowing mouths and shit like coming at you. Like it was just a really good, kind of gory, kind of fun, touching movie. Like it made me cry a couple times.
Yeah, and that movie just came out of nowhere. And I don't remember it really in the theaters. I just remember being like, there's this kind of a buzz about it. So I finally just like picked it up and watched it. And I was kind of blown away by it. And that this thing could just come out of nowhere and be so ridiculously, I think it's fairly low budget too, but be so ridiculously good, And so I needed you to have seen that. So I'm glad.
And I'm so glad that I did. I mean, because it's one of those movies that you're like, I was scared by it. I was laughing at it. I cried at it. Like it ran the entire gamut of emotions for me. And it was just a really good watch. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't see it, when it first came out. So I could be telling people to go watch this movie more than I, have been since I watched it. But I really, really enjoyed that movie. So if y'all have not seen Attack the Block, definitely go and watch it. So, and it was in your top 10, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. I think it was. And I also watched, I rarely ever go back and watch like the quote unquote classics.
Yeah.
Right? Like I tend to watch things from like 1970 to the present day more often than anything else. But, we were talking during our episode on Alien, and I know we mentioned Forbidden Planet.
Yep.
Because they sort of like took some aspects of that movie to make
aliens and horror films. Yeah.
Right. And so I sat down to watch Forbidden Planet because I've never seen it before. And by God, it is like, I can totally see where a lot of like science fiction horror is like stemmed from this particular movie.
Yeah. I need to see it. I still haven't, but I know how good it is based on, its legacy. And of course you rated it 4 stars, right?
Yeah, this is a 4-star movie for me. I enjoyed it the entire way through. I thought it was great. Anne Francis in this is so good. And I always know her from that movie, just from that line from Rocky Horror Picture Show, like one of those, in that song, Anne Francis stars in Forbidden Planet, right?
Anne Francis stars in
Forbidden Planet. Yeah. But it's good. I could totally see like where they took things from that movie to bring into Alien itself. And it was incredibly like neat to watch it from that point of view, having just watched Alien at that particular time and having seen Alien so many times before that.
Yeah.
I will also add in that Leslie Nielsen is in this movie, and he's quite the fucking looker, really. Like, I know I sort of remember picking him maybe as like one of the hottest guys whenever we did Creep Show, right? But
and this is in the before times, right? Before he had white hair.
Yeah, and he's super good looking. So, I mean, like I think you should watch this movie. I know you would love it. And it's kind of rare that we go back and watch things, from that particular like time period in cinema. I don't think on the Film Flamers we've ever covered anything that was made before 1970.
No.
On
Rosemary's
Flashbacks
Baby,
we
right?
did. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, there was some 60s in there.
Yeah.
But that was late 60s. So, I mean, I think that we may be due for a classic choice at some point and just like talk about it.
So based on classic choices, we just recently covered Poltergeist, and I know I talked a little bit about watching the remake, before, but I did go back and I watched the remake. So instead of going back in time, I went forward in time to 2015 from 1982 and watched the remake of Poltergeist, which I gave a 2.5 star, kind of a meh movie to me because they did so many things well, technically, but all of those emotional beats just fell flat to me, or they just went the opposite direction. And I think that it was almost like a paint by numbers film. They had the property and they wanted to just do it. It was time, and they needed to find director and team really that was really super passionate about it. Both director and producer. They need to find some like writer, producer, directing combo that's just as passionate about it as Spielberg and Hooper were the first time around. But I don't know. That was kind of a dream team to make the first Poltergeist, and everything kind of came together. So it's like either just don't remake it or find people that are going to really, really do it justice or do something different. Like we know that the Russo brothers are going to try their hand at it. So I'm interesting. I'm kind of, I don't know, tentatively excited about that, but also tentatively worried. So we'll see. I'm not sure where to put my emotions.
Yeah, I have not. So I saw it in the theater and then I purchased the movie and I have not, it's still wrapped up on my shelf. I haven't watched it since then. So it's been 5 years since I've seen it.
Okay.
I need to revisit and just see, because I didn't hate it. I just,
yeah,
I didn't hate it. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
It was there, so, but I get it when you're talking about like, losing the emotional connection to a movie, right? And a lot of that can be like the nostalgia you feel around it or the performances that you feel in that movie.
Mm-hmm. And
really just like sometimes you just need a good cry, right?
Yeah. And this just didn't do it for me.
No.
Did anything make you cry?
Yeah. So I really just needed to like watch something that I knew would make me cry. I don't know. I feel a catharsis sometimes in that. And I just wanted to do it. And so I sat down and I watched Still Magnolias with my husband.
Oh.
Because I know that that movie will make me cry every single time that I watched it. Except this time, I went just a little bit overboard with the crying.
So, oh, really?
Yeah, from like the opening credits, like when the music started playing and Daryl Hannah's walking down the street, I started to cry. And then I started to cry even harder, and I cried the entire way through the movie, so much so that my husband just wanted to like kick me out of the room or leave himself, one of the two, I think, which is probably more likely.
Yeah, I was feeling that too. I was feeling a bunch of pent up frustration and stress and emotion and everything else. And I feel like a lot of people are feeling like that. We're basically a powder keg as a country right now anyway.
Yeah.
And I was a powder keg, so I had to do kind of the same thing. And so I watched The Deep End of the Ocean.
Woo.
Yeah, and, maybe this is a little bit more horror adjacent than... than Steel Magnolias, but it's obviously it's Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's lost her youngest child, and the whole story of losing a child and then actually finding them again, and what happens to the family. It's like watching two different like slow moving train wrecks or nuclear bombs on a family, in two different points of time. And like I said, I am not a crier in movies. I really am not. I'm not. But this thing had me going the entire movie. I really wanted like a really awesome cathartic ugly cry, Claire Danes style ugly cry, but it didn't give me that. But it probably has an award on my shelf for the longest sustained cry that I've ever had in a movie. Because about 20 minutes in you're crying and it just doesn't stop till the end of the movie. So, yeah.
Again, I have not watched this since I saw it in the theater. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm due for a rewatch on this one. And I enjoyed myself crying so much during Still Magnolias that I would probably enjoy crying during Deep Into the Ocean as well. And I do like Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
So, when's the last time you saw Still Magnolias?
Oh, probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I try to watch it like every, like, maybe 3 or 4 years, mm-hmm. right? And this is one of the movies that I just know all of the words to. Like if I could sit down and recite Still Magnolias to you. Like I could sit down and recite Clue to you if I wanted
sure.
to. I just know the movie so well, right? And you would think that after all these viewings and all these years, it wouldn't be so like sentimental. But I mean, either I just really needed that cry, or that movie just provides that cry so well. Mm-hmm. I don't know, So, I mean, I would like to know if our listeners are also looking for things that make them cry, or if it's just us.
Well, we've also been toying with the idea of adding a cry rating.
Yeah.
And how do I rate like an ugly cry versus a sustained cry? You know what I mean?
I mean, we have to come up with some sort of like system to do this, because even in like Poltergeist, we were talking about the number of times that we cry, or like the first, second, third time, whatever. And I mean, it happens in other movies that we've covered before. So I know you say you're not a crier in movies, but I don't really buy that. I think you are a crier in movies. Maybe just not as much as
I get a little teary-eyed, you know, sometimes a single tear. But like Deep Into the Ocean, I had the single tear just constantly streaming down my face. I think I had a red line down my face.
Have we ever watched a movie together where I just like bawled at?
No.
Maybe I've just contained myself around you so much. I don't know. I mean, ask my husband. I will just like...
No, like we've just happened to miss them. Right. And so like I remember like as a group, like I had to go and do something, but as a group, like friends were at my house and they watched like American Tail or something. And
no, we've watched American Tail together.
No, we haven't. It was you and like a bunch of our friends, and I had to go do something else for some whatever reason. And I came back and y'all were just finishing up American Tail. And
oh my God,
just, like,
you weren't there for that?
No. And you were just like drying your eyes, and I was like, I missed it.
I remember that day, I swear to God, because that movie also makes me cry a lot. Yeah, so I mean, maybe you weren't there. Maybe I was just so teary-eyed that I couldn't even see who was around me. But I remember like bawling my eyes out in your little home theater watching American Tail.
Somewhere out there.
Yeah, see, I will cry for the rest of the episode. We can't do that.
All right, well, what else do you watch?
You know, I am a huge fan of Unsolved Mysteries, like I said. And I know that we have talked about the new series on Netflix coming out. We talked about it on a Shooting the Flames, like way back when it was first like announced. And so when it was released, I had to pour through all of it. I just had to. And I loved every single episode. And it's so different from its original format, and it's just, I mean, it's like a modern Unsolved Mysteries, right? There's no other way to explain it. There's no host, right? But we're given these like 6 mysteries, and they have an hour to tell you everything they know about it to get you to sort of like solve the crime, right? And these mysteries sort of like run the gamut of like strange deaths to actual murders and hunting for a murderer, or to like alien invasions sort of near where you live currently. Yeah. So like, it was just a really, really good show. And I love the shit of it. And I know that they have more of them coming out in October.
Ooh, so I watched the first episode. I thought it was really good.
That's the one where the guy was like found dead off that building, balcony, right?
Yeah. Or off the side of the building, and like his flip-flops were on the roof and everything. And
and strangely his phone was not damaged and shit like that. It was good. But that sort of like brought about this whole like true crime renaissance for me, right? Because I mean, I like true crime, and I think over the years I've sort of like outdone it, and you get to a point where you're like, I don't want any more of this, right? Yeah. Especially when it comes to crime, because it's very sad, and there's victims involved, and you don't want to like take joy and knowing that someone's misfortune is sort of like the reason why you're getting entertainment, right? I mean, like it weighs on the conscience maybe. But I watched a couple documentaries after Unsolved Mysteries, and one of them was Abducted in Plain Sight, and it's a Netflix documentary, and it's really just about this guy who...
Yeah, you told me about this.
Yeah, it's so fucking creepy and just like sick. This man just was in love with this young girl and did everything he could to like be around her, and it, like brainwashed her entire family into thinking that their relationship was normal. And I mean, it made me sick, and I was just like,
that shit happens
on the edge
every
of my
day.
seat watching it, and it's just terrifying.
Because I know a story, a personal anecdote from my life about that, like not personally connected to me, and I told you over the phone after you watched it, and it was just like,
that's right,
like holy shit, I didn't know this was kind of like normal. Like, well, obviously it's not normal, but I mean that it actually happens, you know.
On a frequent occurrence or something. I mean, like I was just like flabbergasted, and I I've known some people who have watched this and said you should watch it. It's like interesting or terrifying, and until I sat down and watched it, I was just like not prepared.
Next
for it.
Level gaslighting.
Yes. But even more so than that, I watched a documentary called Tales of the Grim Sleeper. And this was the opposite of the other one. Like it made me mad.
Oh.
But like 10 times more than that. And so like this was a serial killer that's been apprehended recently.
Okay.
And he's been killing people since the 80s. And so, I mean, we're talking like a 20, almost 30-year career, quote unquote, as a serial killer. And
yeah, but how prolific was he during that time?
I mean, it could have been hundreds.
Oh,
right?
God.
So whenever they arrested him, they found all these pictures that he had taken of women, right? Like snapshots or Polaroids. Some of them could be identified as his victims, and some of them are still unidentified. And they're asking the public, like, do you know this woman? Because he would pick up like prostitutes, sex workers, or people off the street. And he was operating in Los Angeles, and in the parts of Los Angeles that, you know, police just didn't go to, right? And so like there was a lot of like racial motivation here, and no one warned the public that someone was after these African American women. And lives could have been saved. It's just the most infuriating documentary to know how many people he could have killed, and that, you know, people didn't speak up just because they are, you know, African American sex workers or, you know, drug users or things like that. And it's just like, I think it's so timely right now to go and watch this and just realize that, I mean, if you think that we don't have some sort of systemic racial problem going on in our law enforcement, like, go watch this movie and you will completely agree that things have to change and we have to do better.
And it's called Tales of the Grim Sleeper, and you rated it 4
Tales
stars.
of the Grim Sleeper. It's really good. And the best part about this movie is that a woman knew the man, the Grim Sleeper, the serial killer, and escaped him. And she takes these documentarians on the streets of South Central Los Angeles to go look for people who could have known him or show him the places that he frequented and things like that. And she acts just like a normal person, right? And she's showing him these things, but she doesn't change the way that she is. And she doesn't color code anything. She's like, we could have saved a lot of lives if we have just like done the things that we should have done just as basic human beings. And I really loved this. I don't think that I'll be going back to true crime for a while because like it's really depressing actually, and I can't just watch it all the time, right? But I really highly recommend this documentary. I think it's great. If you're a fan of true crime, you should watch it. Yeah. You're doing yourself a service.
Well, I also watched one more documentary.
What's that?
And it's called Rewind.
I have no idea what this is.
So it's really kind of fascinating in a kind of depressing way. So it's about this guy who grew up in kind of a normal family, and his father had 2 brothers, and one of those brothers has a son. So he's got 2 uncles and a cousin on his father's side. And his father is like a videographer, like makes commercials and had his own production company, makes documentaries. Actually, one of them won an Oscar or an Emmy or something recently. And his son is also a filmmaker. And so he went back to all those old VHSs of all, you know, because they would film everything. And so kind of uncovered like his childhood and where he was happy. And then like, to a certain point, and then when he became like violent and depressed and angry and everything else, and kind of showing what happened and the things in the background of those family videos and stuff, and kind of tells a story. And so what you find out essentially is he was like habitually raped.
Oh my God.
By his father's oldest brother and his father's second oldest brother and one of those uncles' sons as well. So 2 uncles and a son separately were like abusing him and raping him, as well as at least one of them, his sister. And it's the story of all that, and the story, and it kind of unveils it as it goes along. And so it shows like the court cases for each of them and how the worst one kind of got away with it. And he was like an opera singer, like a famous opera singer in New York and everything else. And like, it's just batshit. And it's, it shows kind of the aftermath of that and justice being served and not being served and what this kid had to go through. And they putting this kid up on the stand and all those old videos and talking to the lawyers sitting down in the original courtroom. And it's just fascinating. I gave it 4 stars. It's tragic, it's depressing, but it's really, really interesting the way it was made. So I highly recommend it. And it's called Rewind.
I think I might have to. I just said I wouldn't watch any more like true crime or something, and I would sort of like put that in the true crime area, right? But that sounds very, very depressing.
It's not though. I mean, because it's done in such a way where it, as it tells you these things happened, that they kind of got their comeuppance more or less. Right.
Okay.
And so
people were brought to justice at least, right?
And it's showing that how he got past it, and it goes to his child psychologist, and they're looking at all the drawings he made in the sessions and when they had breakthroughs and everything else. And so it's very touching, and it shows you how brave this kid was and everything else. So as depressing it is, it's also very uplifting, so it's not that way. You're not going to come away from it wanting to throw yourself down a staircase. You're just not. It's not like that. So it's worth seeing. It's not going to put you off.
Where could I find this?
I think I saw it on Amazon. Prime.
Okay.
So,
well, did you watch any more TV? Right. I know you said you watched the first episode of Unsolved Mysteries, but I know you must have watched something else.
I did. I watched 3 different series on Netflix, and I keep trying these Netflix series out. If it can't hook me in the first or second episode, I kind of give up on it, and there's been like a few like sci-fi shows recently because I really love sci-fi. And if they put petty human drama in there, they make it too like teenagery, like I check out. Like I want like adult fantasy and adult sci-fi. Which is why when I find that, I really, really, really recommend them, but no one ever watches them. So, like, you haven't seen The Boys yet. You haven't seen, what's the sci-fi show that
The Expanse.
The Expanse. Oh my God. Yeah. You still haven't seen that. Like, these are all like so good.
They're not forgotten though. They're definitely on my list. I know this.
So anyway, I got sucked into Warrior Nun.
When you told me you were watching something called Warrior Nun, I was just like, I don't even know what that is, but it sounds good.
Well, it's really, really well made. It's, and it's really well made, and it's not as good as I want it to be, but it's kind of like a new version of Buffy in a way. It's the closest thing, I would say. But it's not as clever, and it's not as fun, and they're all like fucking nuns. So it's really interesting. It's really good. Like if you're, pick it up, see if you're interested. If it doesn't hook you by the first or second episode, then just let it go. This is not a hill I'm going to die on, but I enjoyed it, and I'll pick it up for the second season whenever that comes out.
I mean, you sort of had me at, it's kind of like Buffy, right? And so yeah, that's enough of a review for me to go and watch that. My husband right now is rewatching Buffy, so yeah.
I also watched Cursed on Netflix,
and I don't know what that is either.
So essentially, it's a King Arthur story. But it's basically the woman who had Excalibur and was kind of the leader of the Fae creatures and, all of them before Merlin and Arthur kind of came to power. But Merlin and Arthur are in the show, and it's kind of an off take, of that. And it departs obviously from the most traditional ways of telling those stories, because there's been a lot of different Arthurs. There's been a lot of different authors over the years, as well as Arthurs over the years, depending on what you're watching, whether it be a Disney movie or reading a book or this or that. There's a bunch of different stories, and so this has to do with essentially the story of the Lady of the Lake, and that she was a real person before she became the Lady of the Lake, and kind of her story. And it's based off of a book. Or a book series based on that. It's really interesting, and it's like, again, not as great as I want it to be, but it's adult enough for a fantasy show and dark enough that I enjoyed it. And so, yet again, if you watch the first episode or two and you get into it, then great. I do recommend it. So,
well, would you say if they made a second season of these shows, would you watch them?
Yes. Both Warrior Nun and Cursed, especially Cursed. I probably would watch Cursed more than Warrior Nun. Even though I'd say Warrior Nun is a little bit more like actiony, entertaining in that way, versus Cursed is a little bit darker. but more angsty in a way. I don't know. You just have to kind of check it out.
Yeah, I've never known you to talk about like Arthurian legends like too much, but it seems like something that you would like. I mean, it seems like something my husband would like a lot too. So
well, I love the Camelot musical, so
maybe that's the one Arthurian thing I've heard you like talk about and sing.
It's May, it's May, the lusty month of May.
Oh, if ever I should leave you.
Don't get me started.
No.
And I watched one final TV show recently on Netflix, and that is AJ and the Queen with none other than RuPaul.
Yay, I haven't seen this, and I should have. Like, I'm the worst gay man. I don't know.
It's good. I hate when Texas is presented on TV because it's like they have to do the stereotypes of each location to make them believable or something. And it's just like, no one is like that in Texas. And they should have showed the Rose Room and, in Dallas and everything else, but they did it like, and showed some of the Dallas Queens, but they didn't really. And, and I have a feeling like they did the same thing at every location that he went to because it's kind of a road trip, Yeah. And, so that's kind of weird because they really could have taken advantage of the local queens and the local, things. Because I think there's like a Sordid Lives movie that came out recently with like Leslie Jordan that actually was shot in the Rose Room in Dallas.
Yes.
So it's like, why don't you
sort of wedding
do that, but whatever. So it was good. I liked it. It feels like they were trying to go for something a little bit more serious and somber, but the end result was a lot more, lighthearted and draggy and not very deep, but it got me going enough to where I actually binged it all in one sitting. So I watched it all. So it was, it's cheeky enough, and the laughs come enough and often enough that it's fun enough to watch the wacky hijinks. And it was enough to make me watch it all in one sitting. So, if you're into that sort of thing, watch it. It's not horror, but whatever.
I love RuPaul's Drag Race, right? You know this.
I have not seen one episode of Drag Race, so.
And so, like, a lot of the queens that are on AJ and the Queen are from the show, like different cast members from different seasons, right? And so that's the reason why I really wanted to watch it. And my husband watched it before I could, and he liked it, and it's definitely on my list.
I recognize Chad Michaels mostly because I actually shot a documentary of Chad Michaels back in college before Drag Race or anything. was where any of these people were famous. And I also recognized Katya. I didn't really recognize anyone else. Oh, besides our, there's a kind of a local-ish queen in Dallas called Kennedy Davenport. And I
love Kennedy Davenport. I really think that you should take this opportunity that you've seen AJ and the Queen and go watch RuPaul's Drag Race, right? I think you should do it. It's on CBS All Access, all the fucking seasons, you could binge it all.
Have you watched the show with Trixie Mattel and Katya?
Oh, with Katya, yes. It's so funny. Oh my God. Katya's one of my favorite queens from RuPaul's Drag Race. I think she's just fucking hilarious. She has a one-woman show that you can watch.
So never watched Drag Race, but I watch all their YouTube shows. Like I watch Will and Belli's show, and I watch and I watch Trixie Mattel, and I watch Katya. But and of course I went to drag in Dallas when I was there at the Rose Room and stuff. But I've never really I'm not a really reality TV kind of guy.
I know you're not.
I don't like pettiness. I don't like the bullshit that happens when all these drag queens are together. That was a little bit of was in this show with AJ and the Queen.
There's a lot of that in the other show.
I was like, if this is how you're going to portray drag queens, like this is not good for your brand, Rue. Like that only like 2 other drag queens were nice and everyone else was just like shallow and mean and bitchy. And it wasn't awesome to see that. And I'm like, you need to do better for your brand, man.
Let me just tell you, let me pick my favorite season of RuPaul's Drag Race and let you go watch that and just see, and then like gauge it from there. But I
can't just pick All Stars when they know what they're doing.
Even those are like super petty, even more so than other seasons. You know what I mean? So if you want to just watch like a competition, right? I'll pick one out maybe, and we'll see what you think. Maybe on the next Hot Takes or something like that, right? But so you watch that, I'll watch AJ and the Queen, and we'll meet back and we'll discuss. So I have watched some pretty recent horror movies, right? Lately, I watched the movie Relic.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you watched that because I was like dying to talk about it. And
I know.
It took you a little while to watch it, but I'm glad because it's only been about, I don't know, maybe a month, since I watched it and told you to watch it.
Yeah, I think it was released on VOD sometime in early July or sort of mid-July. And, there was some sort of buzz around it. And I know you watched it before I did and told me you wanted to talk to me about it. And I just dragged my fucking feet because I literally just watched it like 2 days ago. So
it depends on where you go. Like, I think it's high on Rotten Tomatoes, but on like Letterboxd, people like dragging it through the mud, like it just depends.
Oh God, really? I didn't even look on like Letterboxd.
I don't know. Like when I saw a couple of like low ratings and they were just like, oh, the ending is stupid and this is stupid and it's boring and slow burn. Yeah, it's a slow burn. And it's also an analogy for Alzheimer's, essentially. And I think it's important. And I loved the way it ended. And I think if you think about that and maybe, or if you're armed knowing that kind of going in, if you just can't take any of the text or subtext somehow, then, then that it'll be maybe easier ride for you. But I thought it was really, really good and it creeped me out and it scared me. There's things going on in the background, especially like the intro and especially the first half of the movie. There's things happening in the background and things moving around that you may not notice on a first watch.
I have seen movies that are a far slower burn than this.
Yeah.
I thought this movie was very well paced and very well acted and very fucking scary.
Yeah.
I mean, there were certain parts of the first half of that movie where I was just like genuinely scared. Yes. I was like, this is a very like scary movie. And I know it's an allegory, but I mean, like it's not in your face about it, really. You really have to like watch the film.
It's not in your face, but you have to understand that in order to really understand what you're seeing and how it ends. Otherwise, if you don't get it, if you don't understand what they're trying to kind of push across the table, then the ending will probably be angering for you. But if you understand that, Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that, there's still people. They're a shell of who they were and how scary and frustrating that is for them and that they still need to be loved. And that's kind of the message of the movie. And I think it's really important. I thought it was done really well and kind of beautifully.
Yeah, I completely agree because not only is it frustrating for those people like trying to, find that sort of acceptance and love with their family, but it's also hard for the family, right? The kind of people who have to like pull apart that shell and like find the core that you have to love. And by God, the 3 performances in this movie by these women are just fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, such a good movie.
Yeah.
And I read a review early on when it was released that they said the horror was kind of subtle. And I was watching it and I was like, well, that's bullshit. I was like, the horror is like right in your face. Like from the minute you start watching this movie, it's so
I'm not sure
good.
People know what to do with it in some cases. They're not sure where to put their emotions. And, you might have to watch it a couple times. I've only seen it the once. And maybe I'd read a couple things about it beforehand. Like Babadook is kind of an analogy, for loss, and, especially that of a close one and dealing with grief versus Relic is really dealing with the loss of oneself and a loss of a family member, even not their life, but their mind and their personage, and I think that it's kind of has to be a little bit more subtle in the way it handles that because it's not as black and white as like death or tragedy is.
And, I made a comment to you sort of off mic when I watched it about how these like Australian women are sort of making these really good horror movies. Yeah. And they are, right? And like the Babadook to me was a very, very good, very well made horror movie. And I still love it to this day. I'll tell people to go watch it. And, we've also talked about how like popularity sort of breeds contempt, right? And so some people were like, the Babadook's not so good. But I think in a couple years, we'll look back on films like Relic and Babadook and maybe even Nightingale. I haven't seen it yet. Or Hereditary, right? And like we'll have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to say. They just have to sit with you for a minute. And so for those of you who have watched Relic and didn't like it or didn't like it as a horror movie, I would encourage you to give it a little space of time and just watch it again, right?
Well, it's one of those things where you can look back at a trend, a decade ago or something, or 2 decades ago, where you can really get some space and time between you and really be able to see that trend. And it's those trends that really produce classics or really good movies, where they as much as they produce clones, they also produce trends of really good movies by themselves that have different things to say, and I think this is a trend of, like really close, familial, intimate horror movies that are as important as they are scary and sometimes make you uncomfortable. But I feel like we're kind of hopefully in the middle of a trend and not the tail end of it, because I would like more like this that have something to say.
Well, I think they should make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's the point. This is why, like, we talk about horror on the Film Flamers and far more than just like your basic horror movie. We talk about horror adjacency and things like that. And there's lots of things that you could easily wrap up into an allegory of a horror movie and get across a really big point.
Yeah.
And so I think that Relic is going to be a movie that people talk about for a very long time.
Yeah.
So at least I hope so. What did you rate Relic?
4 stars.
4 stars for me too. I mean, like
I might even go and rate it higher on a second watch, or I don't know. But I'm comfortable with it being at 4 stars right now.
I really like the places they went in that metaphor, right? Like being lost in your own home, right? Mm-hmm. They really took it in really good places, like being literally lost. And I was just like, this is good. It's very good. So yeah, I'm interested to see what other people think about this movie. So if you've seen it, please reach out to us and let us know what you think about Relic, for sure.
Definitely. We would be really interested to know.
Speaking of things that are kind of recent and fresh on our mind, I watched a movie called Host on Shudder.
Me too.
Yeah, and I watched this because everybody else in the world was watching it, really, but I was surprised.
Yeah, me too. And I feel like it's got to be a little bit more poignant for those of us that have been using Zoom or things like Zoom every day at work, all day at work, Mm-hmm. And for me, it was just so genius to do it. And I know that it was filmed over the quarantine. I know they took advantage of it, but they did a good job, and it was well written, and it was paced well. And, it's only like 55 minutes or something, which is fine. It's longer than a short, but shorter than like your traditional, feature length movie. And I think that's fine too. And they took advantage of digital release. So it doesn't have to be, a theater release where you expect to sit people in chairs for an hour and a half or longer. And so I'm fine with it. And I thought they did a really good job. It freaked me out, scared me. It had me laughing. It had me frustrated. It had me going through the roller coaster emotions. And, it's a fun, cute, low budget, but really effective movie. And I thought it was great. So I give it 4 stars.
And I give it a 3.5. I liked it quite a bit, but I've sort of been singing the praises of these like computer sort of movies, right? Like Unfriended or like Dark Web, right? Like I kind of like those. This one was a lot better.
Yeah,
than those
it wasn't
movies.
Just like teeny bopper. Certainly, this was
right.
more.
Yeah, these are like grounded people using Zoom in a time when that's all they had to communicate, right? Or doing something fun as friends. And unlike you, I go to work every day still during the pandemic, and I don't use Zoom. Like the only time I like video chat with anybody is with you when we're recording our episodes, mm-hmm. right? And so I can see how people who use that on a daily basis would be a little bit more involved in the film, right? But I thought it was very well executed. And I will say, so like the director of this movie has now landed a like 3-picture deal with Blumhouse, right? So he's going to be making movies. And I think that's fantastic that something can come out of this pandemic and he has something to look forward to, right? Because I think that he created a really good movie.
I agree. And you know what? It's made me always look in the background of your video feed for things moving around or weird shadows that shouldn't be there. So you're welcome.
Half the time my light's like flickering on and off, right?
It makes it really difficult for me. I always think you're about to die.
Who knows?
Of course, I have a bunch of creepy masks and posters behind me. So.
Yeah, your fucking mask scares the shit out of me all the time. We won't talk about that. I just have to look at it all the time. I also watched a movie that I know that we were sort of like, we posted about it on social media when they announced it, and I wasn't quite sure I was going to like it very much, but it was The Babysitter Killer Queen.
Oh, yeah.
So the sequel to The Babysitter. Did you watch that?
Well, of course I did, because I'm the one that told you to watch it.
I know.
But thanks for the setup.
I try to have a segue, you know? Come on.
Well, I want my fucking credit.
Technically, we watched it on the same night, though. Right?
Yeah, because I told you to watch it. I was like, this is batshit. And you were like, okay, I'm going to watch it right now. So, yeah.
And I did. For once, I held my promise.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed it. I think we watched Ready or Not, and then we came home and watched The Babysitter because I hadn't seen it yet. And I really dug it. I liked it more than you did. I gave it 4 stars. I think you gave it 3.5. And so I also gave The Babysitter 4 stars. The Killer Queen. I thought it was just as good as the original, if not better. It's a little bit more. I felt like the first one didn't suffer from like just outright stupidity. It was wacky and batshit, just like this one, but it didn't have such stupid Scott Pilgrim moments like this one did. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so there was like some places where it just didn't quite land for me, and I was like, oh, like awkward. Like they know what they're trying to do, but like it's still a 4 stars for me. It tells you how entertaining this movie is. You know?
I cannot tell you. Like I had so much fun watching this movie, more so than movies I've seen recently. I had such a good time. I was laughing. It was super gory in parts. Like it was just so fucking entertaining. Yes. I liked it way more than the first one. I just loved it. I thought it was, or at least fantastic.
0.5 more than the first one.
I mean, but that's kind of way more though. I mean, like
it's a big jump between 3.5 and 4. Yeah.
It really is, you know? And so but since this movie came out last week on Netflix at the time of this recording, I have just seen people take a huge steaming dump all over it. And I don't know why. I'm like, you just don't understand. Come on.
It's one of those things where you're tempted to say like, you don't get it. But if you're not into wacky, like over the top, tongue in cheek horror, like, you know, some of the later Evil Dead installments or some of the other things that we love, like Clue, like if you're not into that kind of humor, you know, and you're not going to let yourself get in the car and go along for the ride with it. Right. You know, then fuck you. Then it's not for you. It's for us.
I just thought it was so good. Like I can see myself watching this movie.
Yeah.
Many, many times, you know, if I feel like depressed or I just need a laugh, you know, like sometimes you need to cry, sometimes you need a laugh. I will totally pick The Babysitter Killer Queen and watch it.
I would love for this to be a trilogy. You know, I want him to be like, I want the next one to be where he's like, you know, in college or like has a wife and a kids or something, you know?
Yes, that'd be great.
And like it just happens again. I would just love that. Like I want this to be the Babysitter trilogy. And of course I just expect like all these like moms and dads to like put this on Netflix for their kids to watch because it's The Babysitter.
Oh, it must be good. It's safe.
Yeah, but I want this to be like some sort of, you know, franchise, and I want it to be McG all the way through so that we get the same quality and passion for the material. You know, I want all 3 to be good, you know? So anyway, I want them to continue making them. I'm excited about it. I would watch it again. I can see how rewatchable it is. I really still need to go back and watch the first one again. But
I've only watched it that first time with you. So, I mean, but after watching the sequel, I'm like, yes, I need to watch that again. Mm-hmm. I know that the entire time I'd be watching it, I'd probably be like counting down the minutes till I watch the sequel.
Maybe it was because you were so excited and happy about Ready or Not that it was just like,
because I mean, she was so good in that movie. She was so good in Ready or Not. And she was also good in Babysitter. I just,
it was still, it was a soft landing for you after Ready or Not. So
yeah, it was true. So I did watch a couple other like sort of recent-y horror movies. I know we talked about the movie The Hunt a couple Shooting the Flames ago.
Yeah, how was that?
It was good. It was also very funny. Like it was a really good satire and not quite what I was expecting, right? I didn't see where it was going in the trailers, right? But I mean, it made me laugh a lot. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is something that I would definitely watch again. I love Hilary Swank. And I like Betty Gilpin, and she was really great in this too. And so this is certainly something that you should watch.
Okay.
I also watched a movie called Vivarium.
Okay.
Which is a little bit more sci-fi than horror.
I've seen that. It's been recommended to me on wherever it is, Netflix or Amazon or Shudder.
It's on Amazon Prime right now. And I really think that you would like this movie. Actually, it's very strange.
Okay.
It's very sci-fi-y, right?
I've seen its rating on Amazon, which is pretty low, but I feel like it's one of the top rated horror films this year by critics. And now that you've given it a 4, I'm definitely going to see it.
Yes, I gave this a 4 stars, and it sort of like blew me away. Like it's a really interesting movie, and I like movies with a very limited cast and a very limited setting, and this is sort of what it is, right? And so it sort of like checks all my boxes, right? But Jesse Eisenberg is in this, and Imogen Poots.
Oh, that's why I haven't seen it.
But Imogen Poots, though, come on, you have to love the Poots.
Okay.
But it's good, and it has like quite possibly the most like infuriating child ever set to like cinema. So,
okay,
like that reason alone is like worth the watch. It's a really, really like interesting movie and something that's a little outside of my wheelhouse, but I liked it. So,
well, I went back and I watched the Hellboy remake or reimagining or what have you. Reboot, yes.
Maybe.
Yes, maybe. Yeah. Mayhaps. And I thought it was good. What I didn't expect was they really kept the Guillermo del Toro style monsters. And some of them are just as good or better than any of the ones that have been designed in any of his movies so far. And there is so much gore. Like an amazing, like probably one of the goriest movies I've ever seen. And some of it's fairly inventive. And it's not what the monsters so much do to some of the people. It's that the monsters themselves are designed to kill people in certain ways. So it's hard to explain.
Like if y'all could see the look on my face right now, I'm just like,
no, you need to see it just for that. I mean, it's worth seeing some of the actors in this. I thought it was well done. It's just kind of, they didn't quite nail the tone, and the story is interesting, I guess. The acting is spotty here and there. Mila Jovovich, bless her heart, this is not her best role. But she plays the main bad guy, which is kind of interesting for her. And so I thought it was good, and I watched it again, and just for the creature design alone and some of the gore, it's just over the top. So I would recommend it for those of you over the top, tongue-in-cheek gore fans. And for those of you that are interested in design.
I'm raising my hand. This movie was sort of critically panned when it came out, and so I was a little hesitant to watch it, right? But I trust your recommendation. So.
Yeah, like I said, it's a 3-star, right? But it's definitely worth a watch, especially if you enjoy those certain aspects that it does well, and it does them very well. So I think you would enjoy it.
Good. Okay, yeah, I'll add it to my list for sure.
I've also been really jonesing for more Mike Flanagan in my life after my love affair with The Haunting of Hill House, as well as the wonderful Dr. Sleep. And so I've just been jonesing for more Mike Flanagan. And of course, I've enjoyed some of his other work that he did. That one where the lady's chained to the wall, and that one Stephen King thing.
Oh, Gerald's Game. You also like Oculus.
I also really loved Oculus.
I think Flanagan is pretty much like your like recent director of choice.
Yeah, and no one else likes Oculus. I love Oculus.
I like Oculus.
I thought it was really inventive, and I thought it was really, really effective. And I love horror like that that's not explained. But anyway, you know that about me. So I watched Ouija, Origin of Evil, and I've kind of stayed away from it because the first one was rated so horribly and is so panned universally. And I didn't want to start in the second one. But then I realized, it's a prequel, so I don't have to watch the first one. So I watched Ouija, Origin of Evil, and it was really good. I thought it was really good. Like 4 stars. Like, I thought some of the stuff that they did in that was really, really good. But, that's Mike Flanagan for you. He's really good about balance in a movie between characterization as well as horror. And he's really good at effective and spooky and creepy horror and dread and all of that. And so he does it, and it's different enough in all of his different things to be interesting and new and fresh each time. So I really enjoy that. And it's one of the reasons why I enjoy him so much. So yeah, go watch Ouija Origin of Evil if you haven't already. It's a really solid horror flick.
I have to second that. I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit when I saw it. I've only seen it the one time. It's sort of like when it first came out on VOD. But I mean, like Mike Flanagan really doesn't make bad horror movies. He makes excellent horror movies. And I don't think that I've seen a film of his or even a series of his that I disliked at this point. Mm-hmm. I think that he's just so good. And we talk a lot about like the directors of the past that we like, and we talk about their oeuvre. And I think we fail to like realize like people are creating their oeuvres right now, right? And I think that Flanagan is one that we're going to be talking about for quite some time.
And he seems just makes super dedicated to the horror genre, which I love. Yes. I mean, his name is gonna go up there, right, with all the other horror greats in directing, just based on the last 10 years alone, and he's still like our age.
Yeah.
Maybe a little
that
older.
Makes me feel a little bit.
So no, I'm really, really excited about the future, and I cannot wait for Bly Manor. And I love that he gets to do everything that he gets to do across TV and movies and everything else. I'm still kind of sick about Dr. Sleep not being as successful as it was, but I'm really looking forward to everything in his future, including the Christopher Pike series that's coming out.
Well, take heart, because when Dr. Sleep was released on HBO and HBO Max, right, I saw a flood of conversations on social media, people talking about that movie, and people are starting to like go watch it and sort of understand just how good of a movie it was. Not just a good horror movie, but a really good, well-made movie. And like, this is another one of those things that people are going to be talking about like years later. I think it just takes a little time to digest, but people are really going to like find Mike Flanagan. And I'm glad you watched Ouija Origin of Evil. I liked it a lot. I think you should watch the first one, though, because I also liked that one,
what
too,
I was just thinking? I was like, you know what? I love the Russo brothers, but fuck them. I really want a team up of James Wan and Mike Flanagan to do the Poltergeist remake.
Oh, my God. Yes. I think I would just like shit myself with excitement.
Like a Mike Flanagan directed, James Wan produced.
Ew, that'd be so good. I watched a couple more movies. These are both sort of like tied into like rental properties, right?
Okay.
And I know that right now during this pandemic, you have to travel in the safest way possible, and like beach houses or things like that are the way to do it. So I watched a movie called The Beach House that was put on Shudder. It's sort of a Shudder original about this young couple who go to his father's beach house. There's already a couple there, and after some sort of like pot-fueled night, they realize that they're sort of being invaded by creatures, either from the sea or from space or something. It was very, very bizarre. This movie was sort of like the perfection for me. Like, you didn't know where it was going, right? It could either be like,
so some twisty turny.
Like, yeah, like either like a trippy movie or an invasion movie or a zombie movie. Like, who the fuck knows? It was good. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars.
Okay.
I also watched a movie called The Rental.
Oh.
And this is something that was directed by Dave Franco.
Yeah, you've asked me to watch that, and I think it's the cast that got me down. Like, who's in it?
Alison Brie is in it. And that guy from he's so fucking hot from The Guest and Downton Abbey.
Oh yeah, but he looks like I really love him, and I love The Guest. Man, we don't talk enough about that movie, and it's a wonderful soundtrack. Anyway, I digress.
But this guy's super douchey in this movie.
Yeah, and I don't want to see him douchey. So.
But he plays it well. Like, it was a really good movie. It was very taut, very like sort of Hitchcockian to me, right? And it also takes a really sharp twist and becomes a different movie toward the end of it. And it really like plays upon some like really like 2020 fears or like recent fears about like spying on you, and you never know where you're staying, and how like easy we are to go into someone's home or car, right? And it's just like, it was terrifying. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I'm sort of bordering on 4.
Okay, I'll add it to my list. Generally, I only add it to my list if you have a 4 or more. And I think you're slowly getting that.
Well, now I know the fucking secret. So.
That said, you've given some things 3.5 stars that I've given higher, 4 stars or more. So it's rare, but it happens. So maybe I should start paying more attention to your 3.5s.
I think you would like this movie. At least I'd be interested to know why you didn't like it, right? Yeah. I think it touches on a lot of things that are very, very current. And something that they may be talking about later on, and maybe not so much as like Relic, right? But I think that if you're talking about like current things that scare people, it's something to watch.
All right. Well, you hooked me.
But finally, I watched one last documentary, and this one is like 4 hours long.
Christ.
And it's called In Search of Darkness, A Journey into Iconic 80s Horror.
Okay.
And I don't have much to say about it because it really just plays out as like the greatest hits of 80s horror, right? And so like if you have ever loved a horror movie from the 80s, go watch this documentary because you're going to find a shit ton other things that either you missed or haven't seen since you were like a wee child or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, it's a really good, well spent 4 hours that I had to break up over 3 days. So,
have you watched any of the movies yet based on that?
One.
Was it a hit or was it a miss?
It was kind of a miss. So I watched
Cat People.
I know. I had only seen the original Cat People, the Val Lewton Cat People, and I've never seen the 80s remake with Natasha Kinski and Malcolm McDowell or whoever's in that movie. It was just like, and you see him naked. I was like, this is the last man I want to see naked, really. But Cat People was kind of like, and I'm sure that a lot of people will come for me saying that. Yeah. But more than that, just go watch the documentary. 4 hours seems like a long time, but I guarantee you will come away from it with just a whole list of things to watch. And we're going into October, and this is the perfect time to make a list like that. Well, I think that just about wraps up our Hot Takes episode.
And as always, everything that we've rated like basically 3 stars or higher is something that we recommend our listeners watch. But I think above everything else in this list today, I think between the two of us, we both recommend Relic and The Babysitter Killer Queen the most.
Yes.
So please let us know what you thought of those.
That's right. And we know that we have like rapid fired off these movies and TV shows and things like that. But Chris, so nicely lists all these things in our show notes. So if you've heard us talk about something, if you've heard us talk about something and you sort of forgot about it, go back and check the show notes. It'll remind you and it'll show you where to go watch it.
I have stopped linking them though. So womp.
They'll be listed in the show notes.
They will be listed in the show notes because now I just have to copy and paste.
But yeah, so we have a whole bunch of things coming out for you in October, so stay tuned. I'm going to try to do a 31 and 31, which will probably fill up the greater part of our Hot Takes, or at least our next Hot Takes episode, right? So, but that should be a couple months from now.
And I'm going to one-up you and do 32. No, I'm just going to watch all of the I'm just going to watch all of the movies that you've recommended to me over the last couple of years over this podcast that I still haven't watched. Well, the ones that are 4 stars or higher. And I'm going to let you know what I thought about them.
And I am going to do the same. So I want you to make a list for me and send it my way. And that's going to populate a lot of my October watching. But we have some episodes coming out in October for you. Aside from our Shooting the Flames, we will be covering the movie Terrified. I know I'm pretty excited to talk about Terrified because it really did fucking terrify me.
Oh, me too. It got me.
Yeah. And that rarely happens when we're both like very scared of a movie. Well, I don't say very. We'll talk about it later on.
And what better time to be terrified than Halloween? So that will be our Halloween deep dive.
That's right. Spooky season. And maybe there's going to be another poll to see what we choose to flash back to over on Patreon. So if you head over to patreon.com/thefilmflamers, you can find all of our bonus content and maybe influence the future bonus content.
That's right.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, head over and give us a 5-star rating because it really helps us out and gets us noticed over there. And we will read all the reviews that you write on our next Shooting the Flames episode.
And if you want to get in touch with us, you can do so on social media at The Film Flamers, or you can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com, or call our hotline at 972-666-7733. We love to hear from you, and we love those voicemails, so keep them coming.
That's right. We will play those voicemails on our next Shooting the Flames, and we've given you a whole list of movies to watch, right? Give us your own hot takes. Call in. Tell us what you think about these movies.
Well, Robert, I have watched a ton of content, and I have got to get some rest.
You're not going to go watch more content for the next...
I might go watch Vivarium.
Well, I hope Vivarium gives you some...
sweet dreams.
Even though I know for a fact that annoying-ass child in the movie will not give you any sweet dreams. So we'll make sure you never breed. Actually, if you watch this movie, you have to tell me immediately.
The actor's face will not give me sweet dreams.
Or her name, really. But...
No, the other one, the one I know, the man, the guy.
Oh, Jesse Eisenberg?
Yeah. Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah, he's okay in this movie. I don't know. We can't even use this for, like, the intro. I can't. Oh, shit.